Hello, my fellow Broke Aristocrats. I hope everybody can hear me okay. I'm doing my best with the microphone. As you know, it's Wednesdays and we get to talk about all things frugal. It is our Wednesday tradition here at Broke Aristocrats, and I hope you're doing wonderfully well. I certainly am doing well during this no spend January, where we really have been highlighting the fact that in January we have dramatically cut our spending. That's part of what the topic is today. The topic today is to seek balance. Balance is going to be the word that we use today. And I'm going to go through some of the different economic challenges that have to do with balance and living frugally today versus in the past. And the book that I am choosing to focus on today is one that we are all familiar with, and it's one that I'll be going back to over and over and over again. It's the complete Tightwad's Gazette. I talk about it often on Broke Aristocrats just because I think it's so well written and it's so entertaining. It's written by Amy Dacyczyn. Now I know how to pronounce her name, and she lived still does in New England. She has a beautiful 19th century farmhouse in the country, and she put out a newsletter that was called the Tightwad Gazette, where she taught people how to live dramatically below their means while living the good life. And she's quite a character. She was an art major, so a lot of what she did, she was able to do using her talents as an artist. Today I am still drinking Tetley. Those of you who sometimes are curious about what I'm drinking, I've got my Tetley. I've put some coconut sugar in it just to sweeten it a little bit, and I've got some 2% milk in there. I do like a little bit of fat in my tea. So I'm going to take a little bit of a sip. And it's delicious. I hope you're all enjoying a tea as well. I know some of my fellow Broke Aristocrats have written me and told me about the various different teas that they enjoy, including the ginger, which we spoke about. Ginger tea being a great anti-nausea and anti-inflammatory properties in that tea. But there are other great medicinal teas that we'll talk about in the future. Quite a bit, in fact. Most herbal teas do have therapeutic properties. So getting back to the subject today, and taking portions of the Tightwad Gazette, I want to talk a little bit about some of the points she makes in her books and how I am trying to relate it into modern life, modern 21st century life, because a couple of things have happened. The first premise, and this is the main point of the Tightwad's Gazette, is that little things add up. If you don't have time to read everything she's written, if you go with that premise, you really do understand what she's talking about. The little things add up. This is rule number one when you're trying to pay down debt or live dramatically below your means. If you can get that one point, then you've really summed up the philosophy of Amy Dacyczyn and the way she lives her life. So she literally takes into account every single action that is a financial transaction and sees whether or not she needs it, and if so, how she can get it cheaper. So these are the roadblocks that come up when you are trying to live dramatically below your means and take into consideration that every penny counts. So if we can take into consideration save here, save there, save here, save everywhere, eventually we're talking about thousands of dollars. So that is the first point she wants to make. Now, here is the second point, and this has become more of an issue, and I want to talk a lot about it here now and in the future, and that is that time is money. I've talked about this in the past. I want to talk about it a little bit more from a socioeconomic perspective. Broke Aristocrats is well aware of the fact that nearly half of the people watching this are male, and I don't want to be misunderstood. We love men, we love women, we love everybody, we respect everybody. This is simply from a socioeconomic perspective in terms of research. It's got nothing to do with bashing men or anything like that, so please be patient. There has been some studies that show that, at least in the third world, male children and men have on average about 2.5 hours of leisure time that females are not allowed. And that's because when young girls are born, they're immediately put to the task of the drudgery work, cleaning toilets, shucking peas, cleaning things, washing, working. Very early on, as soon as she's able, a young girl is put to work. Somebody has to do that work. Somebody has to do the grunt work. Somebody has to do the work of the scullery maid. And it was usually put on the women. The females did that work. This gave leisure time to males. This is just historically how the economic situation worked out in these extremely harsh third world countries, and to some extent in days gone by here in the United States. So women did that kind of work, and then males had 2.5 hours of leisure. Now, 2.5 hours of leisure could be spent becoming educated, and then by being educated, they could then go out and earn more money. So because he had that 2.5, 3 hours, he could go to school and he could learn reading, writing, and arithmetic. By doing those things, he was then creating leverage where he could earn more money. Whereas the girl, unfortunately, because she had spent her time engaged in these activities, these low-paying job activities or non-skilled worker activities, she unfortunately couldn't read, she couldn't write, and she couldn't go out and earn a living beyond the economic conditions that she was born into. And so this has, in the third world, continued to be a challenge between males and females in places like Pakistan. Now they've had banks come in and offer microloans like the Grameen Bank, where they give a woman $50 or $100 to start her own business because they understand this economic disparity. But the economic disparity began because females did not have time. They did not have free time to the same extent that males had free time. So the key to economic change, to being able to break out of poverty, is time. And that's really what I want to get to. Not that males are this or females are that, but it's an example of how time led to economic disparity. This is the second issue that's brought up in Decision's book, and it's really what we would need to talk about here, I think, at Broke Aristocrats during this tea time. If you are engaged in frugal activities, you have to balance it and weigh it against how much is your time worth. I've talked about this before. Time is money. Is this the best use of your time? Weigh the activity against the time that is lost. Decision was a stay-at-home mom. She stayed at home, and it was her profession to be a stay-at-home mom and to look at ways to pinch pennies. And she did a little bit of side work, but by no means was that the majority of what she was doing with her time. The majority of her time was getting costs down by maintaining a frugal home, which is more than a full-time job. In today's economy, one of the main reasons why women are not as frugal as Decision is because of time. They've got to take care of the kids. They've got to go to a job, get physically to the job, go to the job, work the job, come back. So you're talking about 10 hours lost time of, say, a stay-at-home mom like Decision. Approximately 10 hours is going to be lost if you're working 40 hours a week, 45 hours a week, depending upon the traffic, etc. If, or maybe you're only working 25 hours a week or 20 hours a week. Freak economics, or really taking a look at the complexity of economics, means really sitting down with a pad and paper and a calculator and asking yourself, is it better for me to make more money doing task A, or is it better for me to do task B to try and get the cost down? So that is something that really is very different today than Decision. When I think about those times when I spend money, or I'm tempted to spend money, particularly during a no-spend month like this month, usually what I'm spending money on is time. I don't have time to sit and do this. I don't have time to sit and make this meal or do ABC. I don't have a wife, or a assistant or a servant or whatnot who's going to come in. I do have an assistant, but my assistant does something else. But that home assistant that's going to make things so much easier for me. And I have to do it all myself, and time is money. And so I'm always having to seek that balance. The third thing that she suggests is that when people are trying to get out of debt, they first begin recording everything they spend money on. I think no matter how strapped you are for time, that's really something that we can all engage in, even if you're somebody like me and you're working full time and doing a YouTube blog and paying off student debt, etc., etc. It gets to be a little overwhelming, but I do have the time to document, organize. People have seen my Account and a Reckoning book. I talk about it often. And I am able to take the time to record my spending habits. She also makes a suggestion that you divide your spending habits into 3 categories, which I thought was great. First off, determine how much money you earn. Not all of us have a realistic understanding of just how much money we bring in after taxes. So for 3 months, as you're documenting, she suggests you really first, basics, find out how much you actually really earn. And then you want to separate your budget between the essentials and the non-essentials. That would be what we call in this community the 4 walls. That which you must have in order to survive, and that which is non-essential. For me, I like to go to a cafe and get a sandwich and a cup of coffee and study. It's not essential, but I enjoy it. So when you do your budget, she recommends, as you track your spending, to divide it into 3 categories. I thought that was really a good thing to just talk to people about in terms of the main points. The last thing is, I think I've spoken about it here, and I'll speak about it finally. I'll finally close with this, which is she talks about the ultimate goal is to have a better quality of life. That is ultimately the reason why we are frugal, why we live below our means, why we try to be broke aristocrats to the best of our ability, meaning good, hardworking, decent people. Treat others with respect. We have very strong ethical ideas about a lot of things here on Broke Aristocrats. For example, Broke Aristocrats, we don't tolerate prejudice or discrimination. We treat others the way that we would want to be treated. We treat people with the utmost respect. We value everyone's lives and try to respect people to the best of our abilities. And we try to build good lives for ourselves and our communities. So it was a lot of points. I think I wrote down 4 or 5 different points that she talked about and that I wanted to talk to you about here on Broke Aristocrats. But the takeaway main issue is to seek balance. A lot of the time, if I'm going in and I'm spending money, it's because time, the hassle. Calculate for time. Sometimes you're engaged in those frugal activities, but you've just blown a bunch of time that could have been spent optimizing your business and making more money. And that is where I think ideas about frugality don't work for a 21st century person, certainly not a single woman out there working her own business. You try to be frugal, but you always have to calculate for those things. And the last thing is to seek balance. To seek balance in your life so that ultimately you can live the good life, and that means living below your means and not acquiring more debt and being comfortable and basically living the best quality of life that you can. All right, my fellow Broke Aristocrats. Hopefully you made sense of all those things I wanted to cover. Covet your time. Get a baseline of how much you're spending. Figure out what your priorities are. Figure out your essentials from your non-essentials, and realize that the little things add up. Hope that I covered everything from Decisions book. If you'd like to get Decisions book, it's available on Amazon.com, both new and used. I think if nothing else, it's a fun read. She does give some really frugal tips for the stay-at-home mom or dad. I think a lot of those work really well. For the person like me who's strapped for time and thinks that it would actually cost me money to be spending all this time doing these things, then you might want to have to switch it up and spend a little bit of money to avoid the hassle. All right, I want to thank everybody for watching this video of Broke Aristocrats. Be sure and share, like, subscribe, and tell me what you are doing to take care of yourself without breaking the bank. And also tell me what tea is your favorite. Do you like the black teas or the herbal teas? I'd like to know. Thanks for watching. Take care, everyone. Bye.